Welcome everyone. My name's Alex. Thank you for joining me for another episode of That CNFT Show. This is episode 16 and the second of my series on From Calendars to Drop Dates. Today we're going to be talking about Twitter, some of the things that I look for in a Twitter profile of a project that I'm looking up. Now, one of the things I forgot to mention in the previous episode, this one here, just the other day where I was talking about the calendar sites, is the reason why I spend so much time and effort verifying drop dates and times when I'm going from looking at a calendar site to looking up a project. And that is that not everyone lists their time correctly on the calendar sites. One of the biggest faux pas that I've found is an inconsistent listing. I've actually found projects where their drop time or even date is listed on multiple different calendar sites at different times. That's not a good sign to me. One of the things that I learned in my time managing retail, and I learned a lot about selling, is you want the process to be as frictionless as possible for someone you want to buy from you. So one of the reasons why I go to Twitter as the first place I go to verify a drop date is, like I said last time, that's kind of like the storefront. If you hear about a sale, if someone says, I bought this thing that's cool here, if you go to the storefront and it looks shabby, disorganized, dark, there's no sign, it's hard to have faith that you're going to have a good time making a purchase or finding what you're looking for. Whereas if you go to a storefront, it's brightly lit, their wares are on display at the front. If there's a sale on, they got a big for sale sign all across the front of the store. These are all things that are inviting and letting you in. So I feel that if your Twitter bio is your storefront, then I'm going to talk about some best practices that I think that make that a frictionless buying experience for someone looking up your CNFT drop. Now, I thought about how much I was going to share in screenshots in this episode. I try to do that as much as possible to give visual examples of what I'm talking about. But aside from one or two positive examples, I don't want to call anyone out specifically if they're not following some of these best practices. Partly because it is just my opinion. Some of these things are literally just things that kind of annoy me if projects do. But I don't want to put anyone down if they don't do these things. If they are successful without doing them, then, what do I know? I've been wrong plenty of times in this space. So, but I'm here to tell you about things that I'm looking for in a Twitter bio. So the first thing that I like, again, especially because as I'm preparing drops of the day tweets, I'm looking to confirm times, not only dates. But the first thing that is absolutely necessary for me is to have the drop time and date prominently displayed in your Twitter bio. In some cases, right in your Twitter name is good. And I've seen some projects who have it right up in their banner as well. A nice picture of their art, minting soon, and a drop date and time. When I was preparing tonight, I was preparing tomorrow's Mints of the Day tweet. It's just before dark on the 9th. So on the 10th, Nerds and Virgins is dropping. And this is their Twitter page. And you can see right up at the top there, time, nice and big, obvious in UTC. No ambiguity about when that is going to be, and I don't have to go any further to look for it. Now, there are some projects where I am excited enough about that I will go to whatever lengths I need to figure it out. But if it's not there in the first 2 seconds that you look up a project, that sometimes can take me from, like we talked about yesterday, greens, yellows to red lights. That can be enough sometimes to drop me down from a green to a yellow or even a yellow to a red. I think that it's a mark of professionalism that you want to make sure that people know as soon as they're viewing what you're doing, when and where to be in order to purchase your product. So that's one thing that I like to look for. And please, again, it may just be a pet peeve of mine, but I think that UTC is industry standard, or it should be soon. Again, I know what time it is where I am versus UTC. And if I have to do more math than that, then that's a turnoff. Not only that, but we work and play in an industry that is worldwide and is running 24/7. So drops could be happening at any time. And just because if I know when it is, I'll be able to adjust and figure out in my mindset how I'm going to plan out that day. But again, if that's in a local time zone and I have to do some extra math to figure out when it's going to be, that's just adding friction to the process of me finding out more about your project. So the second thing that I look at is I want a rough gauge of how many followers a project has. Now, there are plenty of good projects that don't have very many followers. And by the same token, there's plenty of bad projects that have lots and lots and lots of followers. So I look for kind of a sweet spot in between. And there's a couple of things to consider when I'm talking about that. First off is if there's too few followers for the size of their drop. If it's a 10,000 piece project, and they've only got a couple of hundred followers, it doesn't necessarily mean that it's not going to take off or that they're not going to be successful. But maybe if they were to be able to wait a little bit longer and do some of the community building and get more excitement going, it's going to lead to a more successful drop. I have bought projects that early on, before I knew much better, I didn't realize that this might mean that they're not going to make it if they don't sell out. That's not the same thing as a rug pull, I think. A rug pull is when you promise a lot of stuff and then disappear, and that's malicious. But if you build a very large project or have very grandiose ideas and don't put in the time or the work necessary to build a community of people that are going to purchase all of those for you, that initial drop is not going to be able to fund further iterations of your project or some of the things you might want to do down the road. So if there's a drop date that's 1 or 2 days away and the project is not putting in the work of building up a community, I don't have as much faith that they're going to be able to do some of the other things that they want to do, or if they have a roadmap. And again, that doesn't always mean that they're being sneaky or being malicious or are going to rug pull, but sometimes projects just don't make it. And if they want to build stuff off of their initial offering, they might not be able to if they only have 1/100th of their pieces in terms of followers on Twitter or on Discord. And I'll talk more about Discord in the next episode in this series. So another one of the projects that I thought did very well in this was Lucid Dreams CNFT. Lucid Dreams, I heard about them when they had just under 500 followers, and one of the first things that they posted, besides just a couple of examples of the art, was that they weren't going to release a Discord until they had reached 500 followers. They did a few days later, or I think it might have even been a few hours later or the next day, and they released their link to their Discord and then started building that. And then when they got 1,000 followers, they dropped more previews and talked about a roadmap. And then at 1,500, they gave us a launch date. And I think that building that community in steps is one of the best ways to gauge whether or not you're ready to sell a project that's as big as you hope it's going to be. Now, the opposite side of too few followers is obviously too many. I don't think there are any hard and fast guidelines that I can give, but sometimes if you look at a project and they have thousands of followers or tens of thousands of followers, that just kind of gives me weird vibes, right? So a couple of concrete things to look for are how recent was their join date on Twitter? Are they followed by anyone that you're following? There are some trusted names in the community, and if a project has 10,000 followers and no one that you have ever heard of or followed before is following this project, that's pretty suspicious to me. We know that there are projects out there that can or do buy followers. It's a pretty common practice in social media, and there are ways to inflate followers, giveaways, promises of, this project's going to 100x, this we're going to do a game, we're going to do a play to earn, we're going to have royalties. Like, there's buzzwords that scammy projects use to attract people who are interested in pumping into a new hot project that may be a dump afterwards. This could be, some of the exceptions to this are if a new project is connected to a well-known personality in the space. Again, I'll bring up Nerds and Virgins is Ape Crypto YT, and he has tons and tons of followers. So his crypto project, his CNFT project, has tons and tons of followers in a very short amount of time, and that's not a red flag because it's explicable. The other thing to tell that followers are fake or followers are bots or followers are not invested is who or how many people are engaging with the project. Are you seeing it as shares, likes, retweets around? Are people saying, hey, look at this? Is the project itself engaged with its followers and lifting people up and thanking people? Or is it just a shill fest and no response from anyone coming back because those people might be fake who they're talking to? And that engagement is the next point I wanted to make. Number 3, something that I want to look for if I start scrolling down the initial 2 or 3 pages of a Twitter bio. If the drop date is tomorrow and the project hasn't tweeted in 2 weeks, that's a red flag. They're just not doing the work of building a community, getting themselves out there, and interacting with the people who are going to make them successful. And if they are unable or unwilling to do that amount of work, I don't have very much faith in any further steps that they are promising, or whether or not this is going to be a successful drop, whether it's going to sell out, whether it's going to be worth reselling. Projects have to put in the work, and if they're not doing 5, 10, 20 tweets a day, then they're probably not going to be that successful in building that community. The other thing that I wanted to mention about interaction and engagement on behalf of a project is, are they only shilling or are they being part of the community? And some of the ways that you see that are they interacting with and lifting up other projects? I'm a fan of a lot of projects in this space. I retweet a lot of projects that I like. I comment and say, oh, great art, I like what you're doing, congrats on your good drop. These are all ways that if projects are to be successful in this community, they need to be part of the community, and you can tell that in the engagement and what they're putting out as tweets. If it's only shilling, if it's only talking about features, if it's only talking about price, if it's only talking about number of pieces, and it's only talking about drop dates, they're not trying to join the community, and I don't think that the community is going to give back to them. So those are some of the things that I look for and worried about. And last but not least, the fourth thing that I want to talk about is, does the art speak to you? If there's rarity, if there's hype, if there's interesting, cool features. If it's in a project where the art just turns me off for whatever reason, maybe it's derivative, maybe it's in a style that I don't like, maybe it's something that's a little niche or even silly that I just don't get what the in joke is, I'm probably going to pass on that project no matter how successful I think it might be in terms of money and sales. Whereas if it's something original, something high quality, and something that says something to me, in my soul, there are pieces out there that can sell a project just bam, right? You probably can think of a few off the top of your head where you've said, holy smokes, I need to buy one of these because they are so cool and I have not seen them anywhere else. And whether that project sells out, whether or not I can ever sell one of those, on secondary, or whether or not anyone else is going to believe me when I tell them about it, if it's something that speaks to you, that's a really, really good reason to learn more about the project. And if you can tell that from its storefront, from its Twitter page, then that's a really good reason to go inside and learn more. So again, talked a little bit longer than I thought I was going to today, but I hope these tips help you both as a consumer looking for projects to buy or projects to get involved with as a community member, or I've had some really great feedback from some brand new projects. And if you can set some of these things up or follow some of these best practices, I hope that listening to me ramble on about this can help you have a more successful drop, because ultimately I want to see projects succeed that become part of this community. And for me, of course, Twitter is primarily the way that I engage with projects and that I engage with other people who want to share cool things and tell me about stuff they like and ask me what I'm interested in buying. So that's one of the reasons why I think Twitter is so important. And if your storefront is set up correctly, you're going to have lots of people come inside to hang out and chat and ultimately buy things. So that's it for me for tonight. Tomorrow, I am going to be working on the third part in this series, and I'm going to be talking about Discord and web pages. And so if you have any questions, or if you want to hit me up on Twitter and talk about some more best practices about what you want to look for in someone else's Twitter bio, or stuff that annoys you or stuff that makes you think it's a red flag, I'd love to hear about that as well. So thank you again very much for joining me. I will see you probably Friday if everything goes as planned, and I'll be talking about part 3 in this series. Thanks very much for joining me.